Most people understand the watches that they're looking forward and want to buy. But a lot of people, probably you, don't know the watches that you just can't buy, that you shouldn't buy. But I do, and believe me, there are 12 of them that I swear that you should just never buy in your entire life. I'm not gonna hold back, and the last one on the list is by far the most important, so make sure you're watching that. Number one, I'm gonna start with none other than the BLANC swatch collab. I'm a big moon swatch person. I'm actually a big proponent of it because I just like it. I understand it's made of plastic and it's $300, and I get that it's not a great value for money per se, but I actually think for plastic watches is the best executed one I've ever seen. Now, when you look at the BLANC one, then people tell me, oh, it's an automatic movement, it's much better. It's still $400. It's an absolute dinner plate on the wrist. It's not something I could recommend anybody buy. And more importantly, that automatic movement, you cannot service it. So if Swatch is not making that movement in 10 years, you're just out of luck. You'll just never be able to wear it. Number two is you should never buy a fake watch. I know you want to seem like you have it. You want to seem like the guy that has the Rolex, that has the AP or whatever, but you can't afford it. But trust me, as somebody that lives in a major city, you do not want to get your arm chopped off when you're wearing a fake Richard Mille. I'd rather get my arm chopped off if I had a $300,000 watch on my wrist. But believe me, there are stories of people wearing fake Rolexes and robbers think they're real and they will steal from them. That has happened plenty of times, and it probably will happen to you. Number three, the new Cartier Santos dual time. Now, I understand that the watch looks good, but aside from the look of it, everything else is terrible. It's the large Santos size, so about 95% of people, this is just going to be way too big. It's not even medium. But the most important part, the part that no watch blog has ever brought up, and I just still to this day do not understand, because a lot of these bloggers are making money off these companies, is the fact that they released this at $9,000, which is $2,000 over the regular Santos. Instead of putting an in-house dual time movement or something like that, they put in a $350 Salida movement inside. The more important thing is not that they were charging that, it's that they were hiding it from you, so you will go buy it and you have no idea what movement is inside. That's a big problem and happens all over the watch industry, but this is the most recent one and I'm tired of it. Four are vintage watches from your fly-by-night dealers. You hear about a ton of scams in the watch industry, whether people sell fake watches, whether people are, like Cartier's trying to hide what's actually inside their watch. But the most scams in the watch industry happen in the vintage space. The reason why vintage watches are so complex and so hard to deal with is because there's not a lot of information on them. If you look at vintage Rolex, for example, you really gotta go hunting. You really gotta find what's original to the watch. I mean, God forbid you're not buying a Rolex, which is hard enough. If you're Mega, if you're looking at vintage Cartier, you need to be buying from the most legit dealers out there. There are so many scams with vintage watches in general that the auction houses themselves have lawsuits up their ass because they legit cannot authenticate watches properly. There's so much money to be made in the vintage space, and if you know your stuff, you're gonna make a lot. But a lot of people either one, don't know, or two, know enough to get away with it, and it's very scary, so I'd be very careful. Number five is just a straight up watch. It's the Tissot PRX. Now, if you own it and like it, fine, that's you. I used to own it. I had no real problem with it. It didn't really fit my wrist too well. Two things jump out when I hear the words Tissot PRX. One, I'm tired of hearing about it. Everybody has this watch. I live in New York, and any bar I go to with people under the age of 35, there will be at least one person for every 25 people wearing a Tissot PRX. And that's not a joke. It's actually 3 points, because the second one's really important, is that this watch gets scratched more than any watch you've ever seen. You ever see a video about the Cartier Santos and how the bezel is polished and it gets scratched very easy? The PRX might be worse. Anytime I've seen somebody that owns a Tissot PRX for longer than 6 months, the watch is destroyed. You can just see all the scratches on it. I don't know. It's the type of polishing they're doing. I'm not sure. Number three is the fact that the movement's really not serviceable. I have no problem when people buy non-serviceable movements. That's completely fine if you want to replace it. You should be well aware when you're buying the watch that if you want to service the watch in 5 or 10 years, you have to go back this watch and buy an entire new movement to put inside your watch. I think that's a little crazy. Number six is buying the cheapest watch from your reference. This is specifically vintage, but including modern watches. Whenever you're trying to find the cheapest reference or cheapest model, 90 to 95% of the time, it's going to be a shit example. Especially in vintage, it's going to be over polished. It's going to have an incorrect crown. It's going to have incorrect parts to it. And that's why it's the cheapest, because that person can't sell. The same thing goes for modern too. When you're trying to buy the cheapest example, it might have a sketchy box. The watch might not be working properly. Number seven, I'm just going to go with Ben 10 watches. And what this means is not the actual Ben 10 watch, which I actually think you can go on the internet and buy. I'll put a screenshot up. But these are dinner plate watches. Gone are the days when people buy Invictas and wear them on the wrist like they're this big, they look like they're a Ben 10 watch. You should be wearing something that's proportionate to your wrist. Now, again, no problem if you like a big watch and you want to wear something big, that's totally fine. But if you're just getting into the hobby, I want to wear something that the lug width does not extend over my wrist. If you want an example of that, you can go check out my YouTube shorts. I have a ton of examples of watches on my wrist, every single one one fits me very well. Number 8 are full metal G-Shocks. I wear G-Shocks. I've owned so many in the past, but the full metal one specifically, not even made from G-Shock, but other companies will mod them and stuff like that. They get so expensive, become almost $1,000 for a G-Shock, and there's just no way in hell I'd buy one. Number 10, something an influencer tells you is good. And this goes for me, right? Just because I say something and just because somebody else on the platform says that a watch is good or says not to buy a watch, whatever, do your own research. Most of the time, this means that you need to be trying on the watch. If you want to buy a watch, people tell you it's good, that's great. If you have any opportunity, if you can drive an hour and go try it on, it's worth every penny. Because there are some watches that a lot of people recommend, and when you get it in person and you're like, actually, I don't really like this at all. There's nothing like actually seeing it in person, seeing it in the flesh, and more importantly, wearing it. Number 11, anytime anybody tells you that the watch is a good investment. Watches are not investments, and anybody that tells you that there is an investment is essentially scamming you. I mean, the Rolex CEO literally came out and said that the Rolex watches, the watches that all these dealers say that they're investments, said that they're not. So if the Rolex CEO is saying that, you bet your ass you shouldn't say it. Number 12 is still not looking for deals. Now, I did tell you that you shouldn't be trying to find the cheapest reference. I totally understand that. But there are so many different platforms to buy watches on now. eBay, Bezel, Chrono24, all these other websites. Everybody's got a $100 off, $200 off. Take advantage, because if you find a watch you want and then you can find it from a website with a discount code like mine for Bezel for $200 off, you could save yourself some additional money, because all these platforms are so desperate to sell that they will be sending out codes left and right. So if you get one, I'd pounce on it. But if you're not doing a little bit due diligence on like coupons and stuff like that, like, you're really missing out, especially when you're spending thousands of dollars. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you want to watch another, you can click right here and watch another video. Thanks so much.